You are listening to the Next Gen Environmental Firm, honest conversations with the people building the future of sustainability. Today, we are joined by Andrew Rice, a man who has personally shepherded more biogas plants into existence than most people have houseplants. He co-founded the global NRG Advisory, works with 75 funders worldwide, and somehow still manages to stay optimistic in an industry full of, as he says, noise. Welcome, Andrew.
Yolanta, thanks very much for having us on the podcast, and it's lovely to have this opportunity to have a chat with you.
Brilliant. Me too. I'm looking forward to our conversation. So, for listeners who are new to the Global NRG Advisory, how would you describe what you do in one sentence?
We bring a brains trust of people who help get biogas projects away from just merely the concept stage into through the build, the commissioning and the operation. We see biogas projects as fundamentally made up of four distinct streams, if you like: the funding, the feedstock, the technology, and the offtake. And what we do is, the way we set Global Energy Advisory up, 3 and a bit years ago now, was to have a panel of experts in each of those areas that we can bring various options to play as required for a project owner to help get that project across the line.
So you mentioned you and your partner, Chris, as I understand,
yes,
built and financed 20 plus biogas plants before launch the company. What made you to decide to step out and build your own advisory firm?
Well, we had, before starting Global Energy Advisory up, we had worked for a fund here in the UK that had been responsible for, as you say, a good number of biogas plants being funded, built, commissioned, and got operational. We decided, I suppose, the back end of 2022, that we wanted to effectively do this ourselves. We saw certain things happening within the industry, and we thought, like every good entrepreneur, we thought, well, we think we've got the ideas. We think we probably do this a little bit better. So from that perspective, we decided to create Global Energy Advisory. Global Energy Advisory was really, I tend to think, Yolanta, that as individuals, we are the sum of all our experiences. And what we do is led by all our experiences and the thoughts that they engender. So we had seen various things happening in the marketplace. So we thought, right, well, let's, across these four central planks of any successful biogas plant, let's build global into something that can be sustainable, but it does it in the right way. And something I'll come on to through our discussions later is looking at how we bring a point of difference, not only in terms of the service that we bring, but also to the wider industry. So
may I ask you, so how does your actually day look like when you're juggling, many projects? And from our pre-call last time, you mentioned that, you have like 6-7 projects landing on your desk weekly, so how are you juggling all of these projects?
So from that perspective, I suppose every working day is different, but we have our spread of projects are very widespread right across the globe. We're working on projects in Canada, in the US, in the Caribbean, in Brazil. We're working on projects through the European Union, in various countries, through Scandinavia, in the UK, Republic of Ireland, through to India, the UAE. Initial discussions are starting on some projects in Australia. So geographically, we have quite a widespread remit. So
do you sleep?
Count the rings under my eyes, Yolanta.
Well, that's amazing.
So yeah, it takes careful management, but what we do is, we have the support, because we're based primarily here in the UK, Chris and myself. The afternoon really heralds the start of the working day in the US, and our working day here subsequently can run fairly late on into the late evening. And if we're needing to talk to people in India or Australia, usually those meetings take place of a morning here, or we end up having to set the alarm extra early. But it's worth it as far as that is concerned. We're involved in projects right across the globe at various stages of development. We've got 1.5 billion sterling of projects underway that we're working on that are at various points along the evolutionary curve, for want of a better way of putting it. So there's certainly a lot to keep us going, that's for sure.
Yeah. So which, what are your like recent wins, that's like, oh, we're so proud of ourselves, we done it, so what was the most recent win for you?
We talk about Global Energy Advisory, but on one hand, but we've also got our development company, Global Energy Renewables, on the other. And I'm pleased to say that as far as the Global Energy Renewables company is concerned, we took a look at the general landscape, I suppose, a couple of years ago and said, well, here we are, working for all these clients and bringing projects across the line. We've got all this expertise and kind of a brain trust of people that we can bring in to support projects. Why don't we do it ourselves? So we're currently working on 6 projects in the US to develop ourselves. We're working on 6 here in the UK to develop ourselves. And that is really our on the renewable side of things. That is a very big win, and it's certainly a very exciting place to be. So we've got various projects underway across the states, and in the US, the buy-in from right across the spectrum in the US has been fantastic, and they have been very warm, welcoming, and I would say above all else receptive as well to the ideas that we've had. So and working with the as closely as we do with the UK government, they have been incredibly supportive in terms of, I suppose you could say, in a post-Brexit world, bringing British companies, British expertise out to the rest of the world and cementing relationships. And they have been a fantastic help. Certainly, aside from that, on the Global Energy Advisory side of things, we've closed out on, through our 3 and a bit years we've been running, we've closed out on over 400 million sterling of a variety of projects. And these have been, I must be honest with you, these have been not just in the biogas sector, but they've also been across other streams of renewable energy as well. So biomass, SAF, you name it, the list goes on, certainly. So I think there's a lot to celebrate, but we're certainly not resting on our laurels. Next week, I'm in Chicago at the Sustainability Live Conference and Expo. That's 2 days at Navy Pier in Chicago. So a little shout out to all your listeners if they want to get in contact with me in Chicago, if they're in the Chicago area and they have concerns about food waste and what to do with it, which is one of the very big things in the US at the moment. Right. That people are sitting down to consider. And again, you look at food waste and how that fits into the biogas and biomethane landscape. There's lots of really good options available to people out there. So it's an exciting time. There's lots happening at the moment, and a lot to look forward to.
Well, that's exciting. That I'm really impressed of you. Like 3 years being with advisory, closing such deals, and helping world. It's really impressive. So definitely, you know what you're doing in the industry. So you said the ESG world is full of noise right now. From our previous conversation, what's the loudest noise you are hearing in 2026?
I would say that wherever you look, there is a lot of noise against ESG and a lot of noise for ESG. And I think what is really important is that we look over and above that noise, over and above those attempts to polarize the ESG discussion and the ESG arguments towards one direction or another. The reality of it, in terms of where we sit and what we see at the moment, is that regardless of the individuals who are creating the noise, regardless of political parties, whatever political color you follow in whatever country, there is a broad acceptance that The ESG and the technologies that support the whole ESG drive offer fundamental societal change wherever they're taking place across the world. What we're seeing in the US as a prime example at the moment is that there is, right across the states where we're operating at the moment, there is a broad acceptance that an ESG project will bring societal change in terms of jobs, in terms of investment, and in terms of being able to not just secure those sorts of things in the short term, but build something that is large, scalable, can be industrialized, and create societal change that will still be having that effect 50, 60, 70 years down the line, which is ultimately where we want, as I see it, where we want ESG to be. It's not just about short-term hits or fixes. It's about building something that will be in position for a good long while.
Did USA political landscape slow down any projects in USA, or still they growing and you don't see any issues so far?
No, don't see any issues at all. There is, let's say, there is a broad acceptance and a welcoming acceptance of ESG and the projects that are available out there. So I think it's a very positive landscape wherever you look at the moment. Yes, there will. I think of the old quote from Shakespeare's The Tempest: "Be not afeard, the isle is full of noises." And yes, we can, or more often than not, the way that news is presented and channeled to us, we can often think of things in terms of, one argument, a black and white argument, yes or no, left or right, up or down. There's no middle ground. Well, actually, there's a lot of middle ground because, wherever you're dealing across the world, there is an acceptance of, well, whilst you might not necessarily agree with the ethos of what ESG brings, there is an undeniable acceptance, wherever we're dealing, that actually, look at it from a wider perspective, it can bring fundamental change. It can, and that's change for the good. And we find, pretty much most people, even where you might not expect it, pretty much most people are very, very accepting of it. Right through the different political and geopolitical stratas that we deal with. I deal with a number of governments around the world, and there is nothing from them to say that they are anti-ESG. Far, far from it.
Okay. Oh, no, that's good. That's good to hear, because when I'm talking to the leaders, it's really, I have different opinions. Like, I think it depends what maybe projects are going on, but some people saying that, for example, current USA environment slow down their projects because of the not available funding. But
well, to be honest with you, and I have heard that in places, not just in the USA, but elsewhere. And what we're trying to do through the discussions that we have at the moment is to say, actually, the greatest exponents and supporters of the ESG message, if you're a project owner, it's not a question of looking up the chain to state or federal government to say, right, what's coming down the line here? What's the support I get? What can I expect? It's looking outwards, to the people who stand at your shoulders. It's about the community. That's the key thing. I was out in a weeks ago in Turin talking at a conference about bio-LNG. And the message I was giving loud and clear was it's not about worrying about what governments do or don't do. It's about building that community to explore what the options are to bring the solutions to the table. And they are there. They really are there. From a funding perspective, when we talk about biogas or indeed anything else, I think probably about a year ago, a lot of people were saying, oh my goodness me, there's some of the big behemoths in the funding industry are kind of sat on their hands and not wanting to do anything. Well, that's, some have taken a step back, but whereas others take a step back, there's another 5 or 10 players, perhaps a little bit down the hierarchy of funders, who say, yeah, we're interested. We're absolutely interested because this is just the sort of thing we want to get involved in. And that's the beauty of what we have at Global Energy Advisory is we have a panel of 75 different funders who are hedge funds, capital funds, pension funds, family offices, you name it, all sorts of size, shapes and descriptions, geographically located in places all around the world who have experience of particular hotspots of renewable energy that has been done in those places. They know the terrain, they know the local market conditions. And as far as that is concerned, we're in a very advantageous position where the sort of funders that we've chosen to be on our panel are the proactive ones who don't just sit and wait for projects to arrive. I have conversations with them every 10 to 14 days. So they say, Andrew, okay, so tell me, what have you got? What's available at the moment? We're interested in this particular country, this jurisdiction. Okay, what's over there? What sort of things are you seeing? So, we're very, very lucky and very fortunate. We're connected with such a great group of funders who are not, as I say, not just sat on their hands. They are proactive and they're coming to us and saying, right, give us what you've got. Tell us what's going on and what have you. And that has enabled us to perform to the company to the level that we have over the last 3 years.
Oh, that's great. Do you see shift on the funders' view of these projects? You mentioned that you have the active ones, but have you seen the shift like in the past 3 years, when you started, and how they, how they attracted to these projects, how they want to invest, they see the future. What changes in them?
Probably the primary change I've seen in funders is that they now look at ESG projects, and they see they probably 3 years ago when we started, their level of appreciation, depending on who you deal with. Some of the funders weren't as well versed in some of the technologies as they are now. 3 years on, the funders that we deal with are incredibly well versed in various technologies, have a very full understanding of it. They've got a number of projects in relation to a particular technology that they've already dealt with. They've got that experience in their back pocket. Again, part and parcel of what we did when we secured these funders onto our panel. We went out and we did an interview process, about 140 plus different funders, I guess. And we asked just 2 key questions. The first was, if we bring you a project, what is your attitude towards it? And secondly, what is your attitude for it? So just to put a bit more context and color around that, as I say, at the start of our chat, I often believe that we are a result of the experiences that we have. Our experiences drive us. And both Chris and I have seen numerous situations in the marketplace going back a number of years where projects would be paired with funders and the funders would make great noises and great sounds towards a project owner. But after a 3-4 year period, that fund would then say, okay, you know what? We want to cash this in now. We want to cash our chips in. We want to get you refunded on somewhere else and we're going to be off down the road. Well, best will in the world, if you're a project owner, that's the last thing that you need to happen because, you'll have ideas about growth, how you want to move forward and develop. When suddenly that funding level of support, that option you have behind you suddenly disappears off down the road, you've got to start again. You've got to take a few steps back before you can move forward. So what is really, really important is that from an attitude perspective, we've said to all our funders, if we're going to bring a project to you, we expect you to be in the process for a minimum of 7 to 10 years. And I think particularly in these tumultuous geopolitical times that we live in, I think that's ever more important. I think it's incredibly important because you want a funder who's going to say to the project owner, you know what, we're going to be here. We're going to help you. We're going to help you grow, diversify, add extra income streams, which can be bigger than the sum of your original parts. So that for us is a key aspect of getting a project paired with a funder. So that's from the attitude perspective, and just on the aptitude side of things, what we look for is a funder who has done a particular technology before. There's no point in us pairing a project with a funder. And the funder says, this is great. We'll sign everything up. Marvelous. Can you just give us 6 months whilst we go away and read the manual? Because we've seen that happen in the marketplace.
Oh, okay.
And so as a project owner, you want something that's going to be expedited as quickly as it can possibly happen. That's from that perspective, it's those two, I suppose, key questions that underpin on the global side of the advisory side of our business, underpin pretty much most of what we do. If those two key criteria are filled, well, then we know that, the relationship that we have with the client from the start and moving onwards is going to be a good one because they're being well supported.
Yeah, okay. Well, I hear you loud and clear that it's important to match right investors. Absolutely. So now let's zoom in within the global energy advisory. So what's working really well for global energy advisory right now?
Well, what's working well for us, and again, this goes back to when we set up the company. When we set up the company, like any entrepreneur, when you set a business up, you have to say, right, well, what is going to be your point of difference? What's going to single you out from the rest of the crowd? And from that perspective, it was really our fee structure. When we did a piece of due diligence as we set the company up, and it's a piece of work we come back to every 6 months or so. We wanted to see what sort of success fees were being levied out across the marketplace. And we found that as a broad brush kind of average, a broad range, anywhere between 7 and 9%. But we took a step back and said, well, hang on a moment. If we're charging, say, 7% as part of a financial drawdown that we take as our success fee, that's a lot of money that you're taking away from a project where through that process with a funder, clients then having to think, well, I've got to backfill that hole because, I'm with a company who are going to take a large amount. So from our perspective, we take the viewpoint that we don't want to be greedy. We want to see projects succeed. And to that end, rather than charge a success fee up, say in the 7 to 9% range, we cap our success fees at 2%. Now, what that does for us is that has people, coming back to us and saying, actually, you did all right by us last time we came to see you. We'll come back and see you again. And to that extent, we have people coming back now for a second and sometimes third round of funding as they're, 3 years into our life, as their landscape has moved and changed, and we have people coming back to us. And that, in essence, is the thing that is kind of the wind in our sails of the company. That's kind of the golden goose that we try and protect as much as anything, because if you protect that, it gets you to a position where people keep coming back to you. And likewise, we get a lot of business on recommendation and referral, where people come to us and say, not for me, but I've got someone over here who needs something. So, and that piece has actually widened the spread of renewable energy projects that we get involved in. It's not purely just biogas and biomethane. It's SAF, it's methanol, ethanol, ammonia production. There's wind, there's some solar in there, a lot of different disciplines. So that really is kind of the thing that works well for us every day, every week, every month, every year. And that underpins everything that we do in terms of doing right by the customer, really.
Okay. So you've been scaling in past 3 years really significantly. So what's been the most frustrating part of scaling? The volume of projects, the due diligence load, or policy uncertainty, or something else?
I don't think there's really been anything that I would class as frustrating as such, or that has been disadvantageous, because, both Chris and I come into this, set up the company with a lot of experience between us, not just in terms of where we've worked previously through the renewable energy sector, but previous lives before that, in terms of commercial and corporate lending, private finance, private clients funding through a variety of banks, Chris with Barclays, myself with West, Citibank, HSBC. So, we've got a lot of experience that we've brought with us. I think I tend to, any perceived disadvantages, I always have to turn those. I'm a glass half full kind of a guy, and I always have to turn those round into the positives. So I think potentially the areas that can slow projects down if they're being presented to us is certainly around those four. When we're talking about biogas projects, around those four key central parts of it. Yes, we're here to sort out the funding, but certainly from a perspective of modelling, sometimes the financial predictions that we get through are a little bit unrealistic, and we have to go back and challenge those, which is fine because that's part and parcel of the service that we do. But what is important is that when we put we put a client in front of a funder, that they are completely polished and ready in terms of their presentation, their proposition, to be able to get it to where it needs to be. So I suppose if there's a challenge as such, it's probably that. But that's part and parcel of the service that we offer, and is what we're here to do.
Oh, that's brilliant. So which metrics matter most to you at this stage? Is it deal velocity, project size, funder alignment, or there's something else?
Well, in terms of, I think in terms of the metrics that matter to us at the moment is that, yes, we have our own set of metrics that we pay attention to, but it's the metrics for the client, the ones that matter. Certainly in terms of things like feedstock. Again, we talk about some of the challenges of projects. Feedstock is an absolutely key thing for a funder, and it's when we take something to a funder, it's front and center, and at the top of most funders' lists in terms of what sort of metrics and projections are being offered up. So I would say that's probably the key one that we keep an eye on. I think from a perspective of ourselves, it's really just to make sure that we're not thinking too much about metrics. That sounds a little bit strange, but if we think too much about metrics in terms of our own performance and in terms of our own numbers and our deal flow, then we're getting, I suppose, to use a supermarket analogy, we're getting a little bit too Tesco. Tesco in the UK many years ago had a tagline, a pilot high, sell it cheap. Well, if you start doing things too much on the basis of volume, then you start to lose that aspect around the quality side of things.
Right.
And we would far rather be a little bit more towards maybe the Waitrose of the supermarket chains in the UK. Keen to make sure that from point of view of talk about things like metrics, that we take the time to make sure everything is properly bedded down, bolted down, so that project has the greatest chance of success when we take it to a funder.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So if we look at the funder position, so if you could wave a magic wand and instantly fix one bottleneck in the project funding world, what would disappear first?
To be honest with you, I don't think there's something that needs fixing in the funding world.
Okay.
Because in terms of getting matters expedited with a funder and getting projects flowing through at a good rate, so that a funder can deliver a financial drawdown in a shorter space of time as possible. It's about how things are done at the start of the process. And it's global NRG Advisory that sits at the start of the process in making sure that, before project is taken to a funder, all these questions are answered. We know what, in terms of our funding panel, to give you an idea, we have a database here at Global, whereby we've got all our 75 funders listed out, and we have details of their appetite for risk and what sort of IRRs they're looking for, technologies they like, what they do, what they don't do. We've got, I think it works out to about 62 two different characteristics for each funder. And what we do is when we get a project in, and once we're signed up into a process with a client, we'll input all the key data from that project into the database. And from there, we'll get a picture of who the best suited funders are for that project. We'll keep the list fairly short, maybe to about 4 or 5 different funders for the client to look at and consider. And again, we do that for a particular reason, insofar as both Chris and I have seen in the marketplace previously, where projects sometimes are taken out to the marketplace and scattered around the farmyard like chicken feed sort of thing. All that happens with that is that funders or whoever picks that up look at it and say, "Oh, it's come out again. I saw that one a few weeks ago. I saw that one last week." So we always say is try and science it, be measured, targeted, specific, so that, every project that we have across our desk has its own IP, has its unique selling points. And that's the battery, that's the momentum of that particular project. So don't open it up to, the whole marketplace. Get it into a position whereby you're taking it to people who it stands the best chance of getting the funding that they require. Again, if you get it too well known, IP is denuded, that's lost, and that's worn away.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for explanation. Yes, definitely
That's
makes sense. Now, looking into the future, near future. So if you were talking 6 months from now, and it has been a fantastic year for you, what would have to happen for you to say we had a fantastic year?
I think to see the continued progress that we're making, certainly. I often think with this job is when you strip all the component parts back and you bring it right down to the essence of what the job is. In one word, it's education. Because ultimately, when Chris and I are in the UK, we're in Europe, or we're in the US, it's about the education process, particularly in the US, I would say, because it's about helping companies, enterprises, institutions, companies that are very small or up to the very largest, helping them to understand what they need to do achieve their ESG goals. In terms of a deal flow is great, but I think the real measure of that of success is where you are converting minds. You are winning hearts and minds, and you are getting collective gaggle of light bulbs going on above people's heads, where they're thinking, right, okay, so this is what we need to do. And this is why, I think as far as the United States are concerned, we're operating in various states at the moment, and, they are interested. That don't let anyone tell you that, any aspect of, life in the United States is anti-ESG. They might not necessarily align with some of the labels that sit around ESG, but in terms of projects that are scalable, that can be industrialized, that bring investment, that bring growth, bring further education from what those projects are about. Because again, the projects that we work with in the States, there are a number of those that will have educational facilities alike to them. It's about leaving things in a better place. And I think around that education piece, if you can do that in whether it's 6 months or 12 months time, if we can see some big changes as far as that's concerned, it's a win.
Oh, that's fantastic. So to achieve these goals, let's say, so what is the biggest challenge you need to solve in the next year to hit those goals?
I think the biggest challenge is just to keep doing what we're doing. And that in itself is not really it's not really a challenge. It's the biggest job that we have. I often think with regards to the way we set this company up and the way we run it, as with any company, the very best thing you can do is not to overcomplicate it. simple is good. And that's very, very important. So I think we keep going with the simplicity of message, the simplicity of business model, that we have. And, I'm a firm believer in the age old saying, I don't know where the saying comes from, but, rising tide lifts all boats. Right. So it's not just about, and again, I think of the United States and Canada. One area that we're keenly looking at the moment is supporting First Nation Indigenous tribes within the US and Canada, who historically, let's face it, haven't always had the opportunities that other industrialized centers have had. And again, that's not just those countries. That goes for Australia. That goes for many places around the world. So it's about, that where that education piece comes in that is so critical is about helping and lifting and supporting those areas. So I'm out in the US next week and I'm having some conversations around those particular areas with some particular groups in North America. So, I think, I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I think that there are challenges that are out there, but it's, if we can bring that educational piece along, I think it is almost ceases to become a job, more a hobby, because it becomes so enjoyable. I think if you can make that sort of difference, it means a lot.
Brilliant. Oh, excellent. That was my last question. So thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing your insights. It was really great to hear, and I'm glad that your advisory company is growing and will be growing because there are so many projects and investors that looking into investing. So that's great. Thank you for listening today. Chat with Andrew Rice. If this episode gave you an energy boost, renewable, of course, stick around for more conversations with people moving this industry forward.